Well, as a few more attendees trickle in, I'm just going to chat a little bit to introduce this event and the Art Colony, particularly for those who are new to us. And so give a few more minutes for people to get settled and into the webinar. So glad that you've joined us for our Zoom event with artist Hazel Belvo and art historian Julie Lafont and their book, Hazel Belvo, A Matriarch of Art. I see many friends and supporters, students from the Art Colony on the list, as well as students of Hazel's and a lot of new as well. So welcome to everyone. My name again is Ruth Pizzuara. I'm the artistic director at the Art Colony. And I want to give you just a very brief bit of introduction to us as an organization before we kick things off here. So I first want to say, as COVID has not been friendly to arts organizations and human-centric organizations in general, we are stable. We are looking ahead to a good, solid future. We're entering our 71st year of operations, and we continue to curate space and time and mentoring guidance for artists as well as students of the arts. Just a few things to highlight. One is that in October, we launched a virtual mentoring program, and this gives artists an opportunity to meet one-to-one with professional artists around their artistic and professional goals. We look forward to this in some form being a continuing part of our services, and you can learn more about that on our website. You can also look forward to our 2021 class list being open for registration after the new year, toward the end of January. And if you're not on our e-newsletter list, please go to the bottom of our website and you'll be able to enter your info and get up-to-date information. I also want to share, we launched a more robust residency program this year as well. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in looking at those opportunities for space and time to devote to your work, to check that opportunity out. And then lastly, today we will be launching, I think we just posted our end of year support video. We're not doing a mailing this year, but we did a video, myself and our co-director, Lila Brown, together. And it was a lot of fun. It's on our social media pages as well as our GiveMin giving page. So please check that out. And with that, for the purpose of today, just a couple directions for our webinar itself. So number one, if you have not been to a webinar before, you'll see that your box does not show up. You're just going to see Hazel and Julie for the most part. My box will go black as they start. And Jacqueline, who you see on the screen there too, is our program coordinator. So we're managing some things behind the scenes. Our boxes will still be there, but our video and audio will be off. There will be a Q&A time at the end. And if you look at for me on my PC, the bottom of my screen, there will be an icon that you can click to enter a question. We're just doing written questions today. So you can put your question in and we will go through those at the end. I believe you can enter a question at any time throughout. So if you think of something and want to get it out of your brain and type it out, please do that. And then we will we'll look through this at the end of the presentation. If you get booted out or you have issues, you can email Jacqueline at studios@grandmarais.artcolony.org and she can assist you. And Julie will start things with a PowerPoint presentation, and between the speaker boxes and the PowerPoint there is a vertical bar. In the middle of that bar is two vertical short dashes, and you have the opportunity, if you want, to move the speaker, the bar between the speaker and the PowerPoint to the left or the right to enlarge one or the other. So feel free to do that. And before I forget, I want to encourage you to purchase Hazel and Julie's book. And one of the best places you can do that at is our local bookstore. Drury Lane Bookstore is carrying it, and they have online sales. So you can check that out there. And I just encourage you to support them in that way. Okay, so now to introductions and on to our main event. I've introduced Hazel so many times over the years as she's taught with us for over 32 years. This might be my favorite, and I might get a little teary, but I feel like this is Hazel's opportunity and time to really be able to share her compendium, her work with so many in the full spectrum, in the full arc. So pleased to be able to be part of this part of her story and the work that she and Julie have done. She has exhibited her work nationally and internationally over 50 years. Her work ranges from delicate pencil drawings to monumental expressionist paintings, most notably of the Spirit Tree in Grand Portage. Hazel was a Radcliffe Institute scholar and a Women's Art Resources of Minnesota Gallery member, mentor and master teacher. She's a professor emerita of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, where she taught for 34 years. And of course with us, and now continuing on as an advisor with the Art Colony. Julie Lafont's previous books include The Gag Family, German Bohemian Artists in America, and Pioneer Modernists, Minnesota's first generation of women artists, both winners of Minnesota Book Award. A former professor of art history at the College of Visual Arts, she writes both fiction and critical studies. Her work has appeared in such publications as Minnesota History, Southern Review, and Women's Art Journal. So with that, thank you, Hazel and Julie, for being with us today.
Shall I begin, Ruth?
Please.
All right. Hello, everyone. Just delighted to be here today to share with you some information about the new book, Hazel Belvo, A Matriarch of Art. And I'm first going to give you a brief overview of the book, about 12 or 13 minutes. And then Hazel is going to explore certain topics more deeply, and we will leave time for questions, as Ruth said. The book is published by Afton Press, which has been known for years for producing beautiful and well-illustrated books, and this is certainly no exception. We're really, really proud of it. This is both a biography and a critical analysis of Hazel's work. It's based on more than 35 interviews. Hazel's work is deeply personal, so this life story that came directly from her is crucial to understanding it. So first, I'd like to give you a quick look at the range of her work. She began with traditional art. She's very skilled in traditional academic work. At art school in Dayton, Ohio, her home state, she was introduced to abstraction, and particularly by George Morrison, who later became her husband. In New York, in the 1960s, where she went with George, the art world was going in many different directions: pop art, performance art, new media of all kinds, even earthworks. But Hazel went her own way. She did an intensive study of cellular structure. This is one of my favorite paintings from that period. Even the landscapes that she did in Provincetown, where she and George and their children, her children, summered, were affected by her emphasis on cellular structure. She was really beginning at the beginning. That's what's so impressive about her self-education. She did intensive color studies at the Bunting Institute, and she'll talk more about this and what it meant to her. But again, going back to basics with color studies, with an intensive work on Joseph Albers important book, new at the time, The Interaction of Color. But all her art has personal meaning. Even these color studies, see the title From Joe 1 and From Joe 2, because the study was based on a drawing that had been done by her eldest son, Joe. Drawing has always been central for Hazel. She says it's her way of understanding the world. And this series of drawings, of silver point drawings of great delicacy, is connected to the final illness and death of her son Joe from leukemia in 1972. Later, white paintings, because she could not work in color for several years, were based on cellular patterns again. Even if they're not recognizable, they are scientifically accurate, and they were based on regeneration and growth, the way that she found her way out of her grief. Her intensive focus on the spirit tree, based on the spirit little cedar tree at the Grand Portage Reservation, right on the edge of Lake Superior, really began with a master's thesis in the early 1980s. Part of that thesis was monumental drawings of the spirit tree. And she has done over the years more than 400 works on this tree. And they've been in various media, many monumental paintings, such as Dusk 1 and Dusk 2, many other paintings that are smaller in scale, much more intimate. She's done works having to do with the setting of the spirit tree. The passage to the spirit tree is between two rocks that you must pass through. This is part of a series of large-scale paintings. Here is a print, a relief print of the passage from Witch Tree, a book that she did in collaboration with the poet Joanne Hart. And here is the path to the witch tree, which is in yet another form, a color lithograph. She has been incredibly productive in the 21st century. She's done many series, portraits, floral works, landscapes, many based on travel drawings because she has traveled so widely. And a favorite series of mine is Women in the World, Visionaries and Survivors, which shows her continued interest in portraits. It shows some very important women in her life, her mother and her aunts, and she'll speak more about the crucial role of these and other women in her life. But it's a diptych, and the other side is a garden painting suggested by her memories of a recent visit to Monet's garden. And again, her travel is such an important part. And I think this painting shows so well how she integrates different parts of her life. The women are wearing house dresses called les maisonnettes, flowered house dresses of the kind that were popular in the 1930s. And here is a photograph of women in Hazel's family. Here is Hazel right in the center. It's a cute little girl. And this is an example of the several times that we have been able to pair photographs with the paintings that grew out of them. Hazel gave me access to her photo albums, which were an amazing resource, and her files, because as she has said, she has the mind of a historian, and she's kept so much relating to her numerous exhibitions and the various events in her eventful life. Letters have been very important too. But this isn't just Hazel's story. a story about Hazel has to be a cultural history because she's so curious and she's so connected with the world. Annie Passes in Grand Marais last week called the book a portrait of the times. And that really pleased both Hazel and me. A central thread in the book is feminism and the history of feminism. Hazel was a founding member of WARM, the Women's Art Registry of Minnesota. And feminism is also the key to Hazel's teaching. And teaching is a co-equal part with art making of Hazel's career. And she's going to talk more about how feminism has shaped her teaching. I really love it that Hazel's story works against certain stereotypes about artists. There's this idea that artists aren't verbal. Now, I'm sure many of you are artists and you know that these stereotypes are not true, but in the wider world, they're often held. This notion that artists really express themselves best in visual terms, and they're maybe a little limited in their verbal skills. But Hazel loves words. She's very well read. She writes beautifully. And in New York in the 1960s, explored in chapter 2 of the book, which may be one of my favorite parts of the book, she is learning so much about art. She was studying at the New School of Social Research. She was going to museums all the time. She was meeting everybody. She seems to have known everyone in New York at the time. But a very important thread here is her learning about language. She was a friend of John Chamberlain, the innovative sculptor, and he loved language. He had studied at Black Mountain College and knew many avant-garde ideas about language as well as art. He introduced her to the poet Robert Creeley. His two poems, A Form of Women and The Door, were particularly important to her at that time for their subject matter, which was about becoming an artist or accessing creativity, but also because of the form and the freedom of their form. Language has been very important to Hazel in her work. For example, here is an installation with roots and seeds, but it also includes, if you can see over on the right, a poem entitled Roots and Seeds. And I think Hazel's poetry gives important insights into her mind and into her other work. Here's another stereotype, that art is a lonely struggle, and artists rarely have successful relationships because they have to put art first, and art and life really don't mix. Particularly art and motherhood don't mix very well, but Hazel's life disproves that stereotype. Not only is she connected with other people in family and through friendships, but she stays connected. I've been very impressed with her long-running relationship with George Morrison. Even though they divorced, they remained close, and he was part of an extended family with her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and this family is crucial to Hazel, very important to her. And the book also explores her inspiring relationship with Marcia Cushmore, her partner of 35 years. Another stereotype that women artists, or maybe even women engaged in professional pursuits aren't really suited to domestic life, and that cooking and caring for a house are manual skills that, you know, they shouldn't really worry themselves with. But Hazel has always had a home studio. Her work and her home are entwined, and her homes are beautiful. She's done a lot of remodeling and shaping these home studio environments, and it's fun to read about them. This is a book about creativity, Hazel's creativity, and the way she has created art from her life, and the way she teaches others to do the same thing. She's never been blocked, which is really enviable to me as a writer who has been blocked. And I learned so much from reading about Hazel's course at the Grand Marais Art Colony, which I expect some of you have taken, called Making Personal Art, a class and workshop that she had at the Art Colony for many years. Well, many of the secrets of her Making Personal Art class are in the book. The very concrete steps you can take to engender your own creativity and keep it going. One of the things about this course is its emphasis on collaboration. Art and teaching have been collaborative processes for Hazel. And the book itself is a collaboration, not only between Hazel and me, but also between Pat Olson, the designer of the book, and Hazel. Pat is a professor emeritus at St. Catherine's University in St. Paul, and was Hazel's longtime colleague at WARM. And the book represents a wonderful collaboration between those two as well. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Hazel.
Oh, thank you, Julie. First, I want to say hello to everyone. I have a list of people who are here, and I wish I could see you all. And I want to tell you that I miss our dialogues a lot, and I miss your work. I want to, I thank you for the people who, those of you who have sent me notes and messages about the book. And I was just reading yesterday, Karina sent me a note, and she talked about the necessity of community for artists. And I thought, well, that's what the Art Colony is and has been. And all of us who would meet there every year and pursue work. And Julie, I wanted to say to you what a privilege it was for me to have your response to my work in such depth. I learned things that I didn't, or I was made aware of things that I wasn't aware of. And the writing itself is such a joy. Actually, the first time I read it, I found it so interesting that I forgot it was about me. Well, that means it's very good writing and a good story. So as a storyteller, I really thank you. I thought I would, the book, it made me realize how grateful I am for the people in my life, and for how many connections that I've had all through my life. And some of I thought I would mention a few of my favorite pages. There are so many, but one thing that happened in my life, when I was in New York, I was so entrenched in the culture of what we might think of as the good old boys, but the men who made the art world so prominent in those times. And I knew I had women friends there who were very serious artists, but the commercial aspect of the New York art world was primarily male. And I had opportunities to be more prominent in that world. But I think by some stroke of luck, I was able to turn my life more toward an introspective, reflective life of learning. And I ended up at the Bunting Institute at Harvard. And that really changed my life. And it was there that I, even though when I lived in New York and feminism was just budding, or that wave, it was at the Bunting Institute where I really became conscious of and more informed about feminism. And I was looking at the book in that way. And what it shows, there are things in it that are very feminist perspective. For example, one of my favorite pages is page 39. And it's the drawing of, the first drawing is the drawing of the baby moving inside of me. And the second one is the morning after he was born. That's the page. Yes, that. And I think that's very, it's a very deep personal expression, but also it's very feminist. So earlier, let's see, there's another page that is the page, it's called Hazel and Rachel. And that is the page where it's a self-portrait of me holding my grandchild, Rachel, up in the air. And it was Breon who took the photograph that I worked from. And Rachel was 3 months old. And so I love having that as a full page in the book. And I think it's an example. See, I was reading Anies Nin, her quartet and her diaries, and it was she who said, the deeply personal, if you go deeply, deeply personal, it becomes universal. And so the idea always in New York in that art world was that everything had to be universal. But the concept that if you go deeply personal, oh, there's Rachel. Yes, very good. And it's with magical objects that hang on the wall. So it was that comment that gave me, I think, permission to really not censor myself, but to move ahead with, and then to develop the concept of making personal art, which I taught for so many years at the Art Colony. And I started that making personal art because I was working with artists who would come to be mentored, and they had would have degrees and extensive background training and technical expertise, but would say, I don't know what to paint. I don't know what to express. And so it was that deeply personal aspect that really brought about that, the form of the making personal art. Anyway, and another page that I really like, that I think is characteristic of feminism is page 143, and that's there's a reproduction of a piece with Connie Herring's piece, the Tiramisu Diaries, and she started that piece, and there it is in at the Art Colony one year, and I thought that it's very definitely deeply personal but universal, because that tiramisu is like food. It's basic and it's food, and then her whole exploration, which is described in the book, is a community, eating together, forming community, and also travel around the country to visit her friends in order to order the tiramisu and eat together, and then the history of the of tiramisu, which is Italian, and so I thought it's a very deeply personal, but also very universal. And then on page 194 and 95 are the matriarchs that Julie, that you just showed, and I picked that as one of my. That double spread, that page there, the matriarchs, and of course my family, those in my my grandmothers, especially my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandmother are both there with aunts, and my mother and my aunt. And then, but the one on the other side is my sister's place. And the Hamilton sisters restaurant in Grand Marais. These were the servers, and the sisters are here on the right. And I love in the book that it describes and tells the story about Mary and Martha, and how I have always looked at that story in the Bible and wanted it to be expanded on. I wanted it to acknowledge Martha, and so my sister's place. And at the bottom is the Warm Mothers. There were 40 women who started Warm Gallery. There were lots more in the organization at first, but 40 women stood up and said they wanted to start a gallery. And these are 5 of the women who were there that day. And so we meet occasionally now, all of us pursuing our own work and lives. And and we meet as often as we can. So that's, and then on page 168, this is when it's the wet paint essay. So it is so, this page is like Marcia and I and our life together, and traveling and exploring and having fun and painting. And it goes along with the whole concept of the studio in a backpack. And because that's how we would pack our backpack and just take off with Eurail tickets and maps and places to go. So those are some highlights in the book for me. I wanted to respond to something that Julie was talking about in terms of blocks. And it's something that we would cover in our dialogues at the Art Colony. And we did 1 year an in-depth exploration of what we called ebb and flow. And that is something that we talked about at Warm too, because every creative life has ebb and flow. When the creativity just pours out of you, and then there are gathering times, and sometimes you're not even aware that you're working, but you are gathering. And so it isn't, the making personal art categories that are in the book were really sort of invented to get past that ebb period until you got into the flow. So anyway, that's some comments that I have about the book. And I, as I said, I'd really like to be able to see you all, but I would really like it now if Julie and I could answer questions that from you. Can we go to that?
Yes. Our hope, thank you so much, both of you. Our hope is that this conversation will simply be extended and there will be more to dialogue about as you ask questions. And so please do that now as they come to mind. And there is a first one from Kyle, who is asking Hazel if you could talk about the artwork that is behind you in your studio.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know, that's one thing that I forgot. That the last thing I was going to say that I love about the book is that it starts with the big pieces of the spirit tree and it ends with the honey locust tree, which is my last series. It's what I call forest. So I finished, there are 18 paintings in that last group of paintings, the forest. And Kyle, you know that series. But when I finished it, I had about a month of, I would say, ebb, and I was drawing and thinking, and we're all involved in the COVID. This is, I think these pieces are kind of about the COVID. Every morning when I wake up and look out the window of the bedroom, I am face to face with this tree. It's an oak tree. It's next to our house, not on our, it's right over the line into the neighbor's yard. But it's a tree that is dying and it just holds on to life by a little thread. And the red is the whole inside is sort of opening up with its dying. So this one will turn out to be day, and this one is night. And so it's a different tree. It's a live oak, which is in the last days of its life. How is that, Kyle? I think we've gone mute.
Not sure how that, okay, my audio back here. So Wayne Rosa says, thanks for this session. And Hazel, could you talk more about the period when in your career when you did not use color? I think he's referring to the white period that you had, and then when you returned to it.
Okay. Well, I had done such a big exploration of color. Julie referred to that, and large scale pieces, and color was so intellectually important to me as well as visually. And I love chemistry. I like to cook and I like to mix paint and pigments. And I was making my own pigment and I was very involved in color. And then when my son became ill, it was as though I couldn't stand color. I couldn't, it was too jarring, too much. And so, and life was so changed by, by this. It was changed. it was changed for everybody. And anyway, what I found is that I could only draw. And and I think it's because my drawing became so intuitive, and the rest of my whole life was involved with the circumstances. And there's something, color is so exciting, and I couldn't face anything exciting at that time. And so when I finally came back to painting, and because there's such an urge to my drawings were all about seeds and roots and internal, like very, very visceral parts of the body. And so when I wanted to start painting, I decided to work in tints. So it was interesting too, because one of my best friends, one of my closest friends, is an art historian from NYU. And she said that the white paintings are too demanding of people. But for me, they were too demanding because you have to work so hard to see what's there. And for me, they were an effort to put something down, put something there. And some of the first white paintings are not in the book because I don't have them anymore, but well, I had them, but they can't be photographed. They're so pale. And they're about, they're called the Transfusion Quartet. And they were first shown at the Minneapolis Institute of Art in the MAEP program. And they're 4 quite large paintings. And they were done from drawings that I did when I was sitting in the hospital one day with my oldest son, who was having a 9-hour blood transfusion. And that's why they're called Transfusion Quartet. And the drawings were about that. And the color is so pale that changes the form that you really have to search for it. And when you do find it, it pulsates. So that's all involved in it. It's not, I guess that explains best of all why and how I happen to work in primarily white. Does that help?
Thank you. Another question from Carlin, who is, again, thank you for this session. And Hazel, do you have any plans for taking your art in a different direction in the future? Or that is, are you thinking about any future projects?
Oh, well, excuse me. I hope that there are 2 curators from the Minnesota Museum of American Art who are working on a retrospective. And that's kind of a very different activity to think about. And it seems so appropriate since Julie's book and the sort of investigation of my whole life's work. So that's, but I can't stop painting. I paint, I feel grounded when I paint. I feel, especially during this COVID period, Marcia and I have had quite a interesting retreat from the world that we're accustomed to. I'm sure everybody has. And it has been interesting, and we have enjoyed a lot of things, but I can't not have a brush in my hand for very long. So I don't know. I don't know that I would change subjects, but it's always from one thing I'm doing is I'm growing avocado roots so that I can make a new installation of roots and seeds for this exhibition in at the MMAA. So I have all those roots on my countertop in the kitchen, and we watch them grow every day. So that's one thing I'm doing. It's very positive, especially in winter. Mm-hmm.
Hopeful, that is. Julie, question. You have often worked with subjects, artists who are deceased, who are you're not able to chat with. Can you talk a little bit about that difference and the perspective you took, even like technically going into your book regarding that reality?
I joked with Hazel one day. My last book was on Nicholas Brewer, a Minnesota artist who lived from 1857 to 1949. And I joked to Hazel one day that Nicholas Brewer hadn't helped me at all, whereas she had helped me so much. For an art historian, working with an artist who can actually say what she meant or what she wanted to say or what led to a certain work of art is a great privilege. I never like to speculate too much about what was in someone's mind, but Hazel could tell me. And as I said before, Hazel is so articulate and so able to express in words what she's thinking, that this was just a unparalleled opportunity for me to work with her. And then also to be handed the kind of primary material that often I have to go to great lengths to secure or even travel. And as it happens, Hazel lives about 10 minutes from me. So it's just been wonderful to be able to have such access. So that's the main thing, Ruth. It's the incredible access that you have. Now, there are also, as Hazel and I have discussed, there are also some ways that working with a living artist can be a challenge, because many of the, and Hazel, please jump in here and add, sometimes the people who were very influential are still alive, or there are children to consider, and you want to be sure that you don't change perceptions too much that a child holds dear. That's just an example. I'm not giving anything away here, but we do have to bear in mind some things that when an artist is safely in the past are no longer considerations. But Hazel and I worked together very easily on this. I think we trusted each other and respected each other in this way.
Oh, I think trust was a huge part of it. It's maybe the most basic ingredient. Trust and also truth. There's I think it's a pretty truthful story too. So it was a great experience.
Very
truthful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Question from Natalie, who says, thank you. Can you speak about your journey of blending and understanding of psychology into your making?
That's a good question. I think, well, I've always, it's just been a natural part of my curiosity and understanding. And, astrology is a certain kind of psychology. And when I was a child, I loved mythology and stories and all about relationships and circumstances in humanity. And so anyway, all of those things just feed into that. And when I first So I've always had that kind of curiosity and sort of thoughtfulness about people and relationships and how people operate and why. And I think even the first time I went into the Metropolitan Museum and I had this surge of feeling that was a knowing about all the people who came before me and how and why we have a culture and how people behave toward each other. All those things are sort of carefully expressed in that museum. And so there was that. And the other part of that is when I started teaching, I did a lot of reading about the psychology of art and the philosophy of art and creativity. And I think it all feeds into the same thing. And I think that's why I made the diary when I started teaching. I wrote down everything that happened every day and watching and people. So it's just something that grew and built. And I would never consider myself a psychologist in any way, but the psychology of living and life and people has always interested me. So there's a lot of studies about that now. And Alice Miller was a great person to read for me to read. And I also think Alice Miller, and she has this wonderful book, The Unlocked Key, that talks about artists' lives. There's a story about Picasso in that book that is unlike anything else I ever read about Picasso, but it seems to be more real. So that's just an example. It's a good question, though.
Okay. Sandy Bott Miller says, this is such a special talk. Thank you. I love the grandmother's handkerchief, a self-portrait on page 199. Can you say more about these two graphite and colored pencil works?
I will. There are actually three. And they, I think that's an example too of making, of the very personal, because I was in a workshop. It was Sally Brown and Elizabeth Erickson who got together, a group of us from WARM, and we did this, I think over a period of maybe 7 or 8 weeks, maybe it was longer. And in, I think it was in Sally's studio. And so after we had a lot of dialogue about creativity and making art, someone suggested that we all do a piece based on the same subject. And I think that was Sally Brown. So then it was decided that we would, she got a dictionary and a closed dictionary, and it was decided that when the dictionary was opened and a finger put down on a word, that's what the subject would be. So, and it turned out that the subject was handkerchief. So we all were making pieces making a work of art based on handkerchiefs. And the first thought that I had, the first connection that I had was with this handkerchief. And my grandmother and her twin sister, Cora, they were of the generation of women who collected handkerchiefs. And my grandmother had this collection of really beautiful handkerchiefs, handmade. Anyway, she gave me those at the end of her life. Well, when she was sort of deciding who should have what, she opened her tin box of handkerchiefs and she showed them to me and she gave them to me. And so this handkerchief, I put it in a velvet bag. It's not in one of these. It's in the third piece is the velvet bag, her evening bag. And that's set with 2 amethysts and a silver clasp. And I put that handkerchief in the bag. And then I carried it. It was my dress-up bag. So I carried it to all the important things that happened in my life. Not all of them, but it was my dress-up bag. And that's what I thought about in terms of handkerchiefs. So these drawings, they are life-size, because I try to work life-size always. And it's showing, the handkerchief is done in the ribbons on the shirt that I wear are done with colored pencil, and the rest of it is graphite. That's the nature of the drawings. It was very interesting. And then we brought them, everybody brought their work, and we hung them on the wall and had an exhibition of handkerchiefs, work around handkerchiefs. So, Sandy, that was a good observation.
Okay, this one is from Roxanne Berglund and your son, Brian. And Brian says there were parties, music, great eating with many, many interesting visiting artists. Do you have an anecdote on this?
Oh, an antidote.
An anecdote.
Well, one of them is that I love good food, and I think the antidote to that always is cooking, and then the memories. Well, all the stories that I told Julie, and I think the nature of the building of the church was the space was so inviting, and it had about it, well, Brianna, I think you would maybe agree with this, that the church was always, it had the essence of a group of people. It was like, it was built into the building that people should be there. And so it was, and it was also like a stopping place between, it's not a, it was, we were not in the place of a flyover. We were in the place of a stopover, because people came from all over and they always stayed there. We had lots of space and lots of room. And but one thing about the space was its acoustics were wonderful. And in this picture in the book, you can see in the middle picture, there's the piano there. That's where Brian studied his piano, and the sound, playing music in that space was amazing, because the acoustics were so good. I mean, even me with my very small voice sounded great in that space. It was amazing. So it was, I think the place really invited that kind of activity, and also the people that we were involved with at the time. And the antidote to that, I maybe it's traveling. I don't know, family and traveling, because that's become a major part of my life in the last 30 years was exploring the world. So, yeah, when I was, I don't know how our time is, but when I was, I think I was in the 10th grade, and our little village where I went to school would have an ox roast, and every year they gave away a brand new Chevrolet. And I was sitting on the fence with two of my best friends. And Sally said, so someone said, well, if you win the car, what will you do? And my friend Sally said, oh, I'll sell it and build a swimming pool. And my friend Joyce said, I'll sell it and put the money in the bank and go to college. And I said, I'll sell it and travel around the world. And who do you think won the car? Joyce. She she was the practical one in the group. She did sell the car. She put the money in the bank, and she's had a very flourishing life, educated life. So, so travel was always in my blood.
We have time for just a couple more questions. One is just clarifying, has the MMA retrospective show been scheduled yet?
Well, the last I heard is that they were thinking of opening the museum on the 1st of June with that exhibition, but I haven't heard any more than that. And I think we just don't know about the COVID. So it's I don't know if it's an existential thing or not.
Andrea Larson has a comment. She says, there's such an expansive array of portraits and I have so many favorites. When I got to page 195, I was delighted with a favorite that I did not know was yours. I love the collection of women from my sister's place, and knowing some of these remarkable women made this even more astonishing because you captured the essence of such a diverse and remarkable personalities. You have so many different pathways, but these collections of women truly brought me to tears. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Any comments on that? I know you talked a bit about it, but any other additional comments on that?
No, but I agree with her. The women who are in that painting were such individualists and such a wonderful community, and the sisters. It's amazing what they have done for people. I was going to just turn my computer around so that everybody can see the full studio, because I'm sitting in my end and the other end of the studio is Marcia's, and it's been a blessing for me to share a studio with her. She's the first and only person that's ever been compatible with that I have felt that I could share every bit of space with. So I'm just going to turn it around, and I don't know if you can see, that's her end down there. There's some plants in the way. There's yeah.
I love that window in the back of your studio, Hazel, because it really looks like you're in the woods. You live on a lovely street, but when you're in your studio, it's just nature that you can see. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And when we're in Grand Marais, we're in the studio there, we're right in the middle of Lake Superior. It's great.
Yeah.
Any, I guess at this point, closing comments from you, Julie or Hazel, what would you like to say in closing?
Well, we just touched on how important community is and dialogue. And one of the reasons that I wanted to show you this studio is that I feel blessed that I am able to have someone to be in dialogue with deeply on a regular basis. That's been the most wonderful gift to my life. And then adding the last 2 years with Julie, that's been great. And And then it sort of filled some space for me of my missing all of you who were at the art colony every year and following your work. So anyway, it's been wonderful. What do you think, Julie?
Oh, I would like to second all of that and say, I'd like to echo what you said earlier about how sorry I am that I can't see everyone's face, because one of the great things about doing a class as opposed to writing is that it's always, you get a lot of energy and sense of where you should go from the presence of the class members. And I'm sorry that we couldn't see each other, but perhaps sometime in the future.
Good.
Well,
Yes, we can do a book signing after this whole quarantine is over.
I was just going to suggest that. Yes, and remind people that, again, a great place to purchase the book is locally in Grand Marais, but they also have online sales at the Drury Lane bookstore. So whether you're here or
also in Minneapolis, the Birch Bark Books has them.
Also online from Afton Press. It's very easy to order directly from Afton if that's convenient for you.
Good.
Great. Well, from where you are, and we are glad that there has been greater access. That might be the one good part of COVID, that we are able to, and thinking outside the box in that way. But from where you are, join me in thanking Hazel and Julie for their time and for sharing their work. It's a delight to have you both with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.